I'd like you guys to do me a favor. We do not need your WhatsApp web. Okay, so please turn off your WhatsApp web for now. Okay, I will join all of you. Okay, to turn off the WhatsApp web and to keep my screen enlarged at all times. Okay, so I won't be doing a screen share. Okay, this will be my screen. Alright, so I believe all of you will have a house visiting later, right? Something like that. Okay, so would you all like to end earlier? If you all like to end earlier, do me a favor. When I ask a question, participate. Okay, if not, I have to ask many times. Okay, so the dismissal time is conditional on how fast and how active you are in participation. Right, so if you want, you can even unmute and answer the question. That will be even faster. Okay, so in any case, okay, I'll get started. So I'll need you to prepare your guidebook. Okay, for the viewers out there, okay, this is the guidebook that we'll be using. Okay, probably put it in front of the mirror. Economic in minutes, right? So if you don't have a copy of the guidebook, you can get it in Popular. All right, so let's do a quick recap, ladies and gentlemen. So, what was covered last week? In one sentence, okay, what was covered last week? Of course, for those who are present, those who are not present, maybe you are exempted from, or you can try. Okay, you can utilize the chat. Okay, or if not, you can unmute. Up to you. Okay, this class is, I think, a bit more vocal. Okay, they tend to unmute more. Let's do a quick recap, guys. Okay. Yeah lah, we're already at macroecons already. What is one concept, okay, that was covered last week? And macroecons is too broad. If you type macroecons, it simply means that I have failed as a coach. Alright, so last week we have covered, okay, the concept of GDP, right? Okay, and to be more specific, GDP at what? Purchasing power parity. Alright, so for the viewers out there, I will drop a link in this video. Okay, so you can always catch up with the earlier clip or the earlier topic that you have missed out. Purchasing power parity is exceptionally crucial. Okay, and how are we going to measure standard of living across space? SOL across space. Okay, not time, space. Okay, so having said that, I will not want to spend too much time on the earlier topics because I've already gone through them for the past 2 lessons already. So I would like to start things afresh. Okay, and we would like to hop on to ADAS framework. So before I start AD and AS framework, can I have a quick show of of typing? Okay, have you guys learned AD and AS? Whether you haven't learned, in progress, or learned. Okay, these are the 3 options. Haven't learned, in progress, or learned. So that I can cater the speed to your progress. Alright, so someone mentioned in progress, good. Okay, so having said that, okay, I will kickstart today's session. So, for our very beginning, okay, we will be making a comparison between micro and macro framework. Alright, so the micro framework that we will be comparing to is your demand and supply. Yeah, and for macro, then 90% of the time we'll be using ADAS framework. Okay, so for my H2 students, the remaining 10% of the time, okay, we will be using another framework. We'll be using demand and supply framework when we move on to trade and protectionism. Okay, but other than that, it's primary AD and AS framework. Okay, so we'll be drawing some reference. Okay, we'll attempt to bridge the difference between the two. I will be touching I will touch and go components of AD and AS. Okay, do note that this is the objective of classes in AYE. They are not designed, okay, to be super in depth. Alright, they are all designed for practical purpose of exam scoring. Alright, I believe you guys have a series of your lecture notes, right, with many determinants of your AD and AS, right? Yes. Okay, so I will guide you on how to use them, but I will not go through each of them in depth. If not, it will take us donkey years. Okay, it's always how you utilize your materials in your school notes or in the guidebook that we have. Right, next I will share with you what are some of the exam, how AD and AS can be used in exam. I will also be addressing the adjustment process. The adjustment process is exceptionally crucial. Okay, so when I meant adjustment process, I'm actually referring to another term that is always used interchangeably. Is called the K process. Have you all seen the word K before? Okay, probably the H2 students will know that better. Okay, it is known as the multiplier process. Have you all heard of the word multiplier? Yeah? Okay, so multiplier, okay, is used, okay, this is the term that economists use to denote multiplier, the K process. Okay, after that we'll do a recap. If time permits, we will play a quiz. Okay, but from what I see from the earlier session, we don't really have time. Alright, if we want to end early. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So with that, okay, I would like you to participate right now. So I would like you guys to utilize the chat. Okay, we'll look at similarity and difference. Okay, what do you think is similar between demand and supply, micro, and ADS framework? Okay, based on your understanding. Okay, similarities. There's no right or wrong answer. Okay, all you need is just to participate and type. Okay, I can pick up along the way. Okay, so someone mentioned that the demand curves look the same, right? Okay, they are downward sloping. Okay, one thing about typing fast is, okay, you will deprive others from using your option. Downward sloping demand curves. Zach, okay, do you have anything to add on?
Don't have.
Serious? I thought you already learned. Alright, okay, so for similarities, there's another one that I would like to bring to all your attention. Alright, so they are both demand and supply, AD and AS, they are guided by determinants. Alright, if you refer to our micro series, you often hear me using webpics and Egypt, right? Yes? Okay, it's in the front few pages of our guidebook. Likewise, okay, when we move on to macro, especially for AD, is guided by determinants. Okay, but the determinants, they are not Egypt. Okay, in fact, okay, you guys should know this by now, okay, that the determinants of AD is, anybody knows? What's the long expression that you always see?
CIGXM.
CIG and X minus M. Yeah, yep. Okay, so I don't know who else have formed an acronym over there. I don't think there's an acronym. Okay, ever since I was taught econs, my time, it has always been CIG X minus M. There's no acronyms to that. Okay, so later on we'll be zooming into each of these determinants. Alright, I want to cover the difference. Okay, so make sure, okay, you guys jot this down somewhere in the book. So the difference that you all want to cover, okay, is we will not be using these two terms. Shortage and surplus. Okay, so these two terms are used primarily in micro, right? And they illustrate the price adjustment process, or what we call the PAP. Okay, not People Actions Party. Okay, this class is not aligned with any political parties. Not PAP. Okay, so we won't be using PAP to illustrate shortage and surplus. Okay, however, okay, there are two terms that we will be using interchangeably, okay, with shortage and surplus. Does anybody know what is shortage and surplus? What's the equivalent term that's used? Right, so if you do know, please type it out. If not, okay, I will cover in a short while. Alright, so for shortage, okay, we will be using the concept of unplanned inventory. Have you all heard of this term? Unplanned inventory depletion. Okay, and for surplus, we'll be using unplanned inventory accumulation. So the whole idea behind this is, Okay, the concept is pretty much the same as shortage and surplus. Okay, so when there's an unplanned inventory depletion, it means that okay, the overall inventories in the country okay, is being depleted faster than expected. Right? And this will result in a so-called shortage. Likewise, okay, when there's a surplus, it means that your inventories, okay, they are not sold at a pace that is expected. Okay, so your inventories are accumulating. Okay, and this is the equivalent of surplus. So make sure you get these two terms correct, right? Avoid using shortage and surplus. I do know some schools, they still stick to that, okay, but it's not quite right, okay, because this is a slightly different framework. Okay, despite guided by the same principles. Okay. So another similarity that I probably want to point out, okay, I forgot. Okay, they are also remember just now I mentioned that they are guided by the determinants, pretty guided by determinants. Okay, you realize that okay, your macro okay is actually looking at respective markets of micro. Correct? So this is a helicopter view. So all your demand curves, if we were to sum them up, okay, it will form your aggregate demand. Okay, and all your supply curves, okay, if you were to sum them up, okay, it will form your aggregate supply. Alright, so the principles guiding them should be pretty much the same. Okay? For the latecomers, okay, today is Chinese New Year, so the agreement is if you participate in the in class participation, okay, there's a good chance that it will end earlier so that we can all proceed for family visits. Okay, so please help me by utilizing the chat function. Alright, I am going to move on to AD. Okay, so before I cover the concepts of AD, okay, I would just like to touch on what are some of the nasty bad habits that I often see in my batches of J2s. So I just want to make this clear. Okay, so for diagram drawing, it's pretty much similar to what we use in micro. Okay, but there are some nasty habits that you want to get rid of. So the first nasty habit that I often see is a lot of students, they will use GPL. So what does GPL stands for?
General price level.
Great. Okay, so please spell it out. General price level. And your x-axis is your real output or your real national income. Alright, so I don't really like R and Y here. Okay, unless when we are really short of time, then we use that. Okay, so within class, when I draw diagrams, okay, I will keep it short. I will use abbreviations. But when you illustrate a diagram, please spell it out in full. Is that clear? Alright, and we also know that your aggregate demand, okay, is a summation of all your demand curves. So which are the demand curves that we are concerned about? Okay, we are concerned about consumer demand. We are concerned about firms' demand. We are concerned about government's demand. And we are concerned about your net exports or your foreign demand. Okay, so the determinants can be found in our book. Okay, so you can see here, page 64. Okay, your AD is equals to your C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Alright, so just a side note, it's not really that important, but do you guys know why do you all need to minus the M? Was it covered in school? Okay, why do we need to subtract the M? Okay, because we are concerned about the domestic goods and services. We're not concerned about import. Alright, so you can actually see that within your consumer, investments and government spendings, you can break down your consumer into domestic consumption, and consuming of foreign goods. I denote this as CM. Likewise, firms, they can demand for domestic goods and services. They can also demand for foreign imports. Likewise, government can demand for domestic goods and services, and they can also acquire imports. I call it GM. Okay, so there are all these imported content that needs to be eliminated, okay, through the subtraction of an M here. Alright, so for schools who didn't cover this, I hope I addressed the elephant in the room. Alright, next thing about your AD is why is it downward sloping? Okay, so it is not really important to know why is it downward sloping, but we can actually draw reference to micro. Okay, remember when your micro, we learned that it's downward sloping because of what effect? Okay, substitution effect, okay, and wealth effect. Okay, they are pretty much the same. Okay, so these two won't be tested at all. Okay, so we don't really need to dwell too much into that. All we need to know it is downward sloping, and the components are C, I, G, and X minus M. Is everyone clear? Alright, next, okay, I want to cover the direction of AD. Okay, I reckon that some of you have learned, some of you are learning. Okay, so AD is significantly easier. Why? Okay, because there is only two directions they will shift. Okay, it's either that they will shift right or they will shift left. And remember, I've mentioned that they follow the principles of micro. Okay, what's the implication of a shift? Okay, a shift simply means that this is a non-price factor. So any of the factors that you see in C, I, G, X minus M, so long as it is a non-price factor, it will cause a shift. Alright, so later on I will go through the thought process on how you are going to look at the question and decide, okay, which are the factors to use. Okay, as a start, I don't recommend you to memorize your school answer, your school lecture notes, because there are simply too many determinants out there. Alright, so when you start memorizing, it means that you don't understand. So I'll teach you an easier way of how to deduce it. Okay, reverse deduction. Okay, so for now, is everyone good with the directions? So we'll be consistent, left and right. Okay, we will not use the word increase or decrease. Okay, at least for what we are using in AYE in our class. Okay, but increase or decrease is actually all acceptable for AD, but AS is a bit more complicated. So we use left and right. Okay, so I am going to go through some of the determinants of AD here. Okay, and I will quickly screen through. You can see that there are a lot of determinants for consumption, okay, investment. Okay, I don't have government and net exports. Okay, so primarily C and I, there are a lot of determinants. Okay, so now I would like you guys to participate, okay, in the chat. So which determinant do you all think is the most important, that is often emphasized in school, that you still remember, or whichever determinant that you still remember? Okay, when I mean determinant, I mean the sub-determinants. Okay, consumption is the main determinant, but what determines consumption? Okay, so someone brought up interest rate. Okay, interest rate is a common determinant. Okay, across different CIG and X minus M. What else? What are the other sub-determinants that are often emphasized in school? Okay, we have wealth. Okay, we also have tax rates. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how are we going to utilize one of the determinant, okay, to deduce. Like I say, it's always easier to understand, okay, rather than memorize. Okay, so let's pick tax rates, for instance. Okay, do I have tax rates here? I don't. We want to put tax rates here. Direct tax. So strangely, I don't have it here. Yeah, I will show you how to derive that. So for instance, if you look at a case study, okay, they tell you that, okay, there is changes in your tax rates. Okay, how you got to be concerned? Number one, is it going to affect AD or AS? Number two, which component of AD and or AS is affected. Right? So some of the factors, most of the sub-determinants, they only affect either AD or AS. There are certain special cases where both AD and AS are affected. Okay, exchange rate is one of them. Okay, so I will see whether time permits. Okay, if not, okay, I will just stick to the simple side. Okay, we pick one sub-determinant and identify which part of the AD or AS affected. So tax rates. So whenever you cover tax rates, you have to be concerned. Okay, so this is the part where you need to distinguish between direct tax and indirect tax. What's the difference between the two? How are the two different? Okay, especially for taxes. Yeah, we know direct tax. So how are they different other than spelling? Are they the same? Okay, are they going to affect AD and AS the same way? So we learned that, okay, is the groups affected? Okay, which group are you referring to? Alright, so let's go back one step backwards. Indirect tax, when we use it in micro, who is affected? The usage of indirect tax in micro. Suddenly very quiet. Indirect tax is a wet pigs factor, right? Okay, it's a wet pigs factor. Same category of subsidy. So now my question is, who is it going to affect? Right? Indirect tax is going to affect producers. Okay, it's a tax on expenditure. So the producers will bear the tax. Okay, and they will pass off some tax burdens to the consumer. Okay, so for those who pick consumer, not correct. Producers. So in micro, we spend a lot of time illustrating how producers are affected in indirect tax. So this is probably one of the few times that you start to experience direct tax. Okay, what's the role of direct tax? Okay, direct tax is the tax on income. Okay, so this is on consumers. Okay, and later on I will share with you firms. So you guys want to jot this down first. Okay, so from a macro perspective, okay, we can actually see that a direct tax. Wait, what like that? Strange. Sorry, some technical issues. Okay, if it's going to affect producers, okay, it's going to, from a macro perspective, remember all the producers from a helicopter perspective is going to affect the AS curve, right? Yes? Okay, because it will affect all producers. Okay, so recently there's a Singapore news. Okay, it's only very recent. Okay, mentioning about a form of indirect tax that is going up. Do you all know what's the form of indirect tax that's going up? Are you following the news? Three letter word. Okay, GST. Okay, GST is an indirect tax. Okay, it affects your AS curve. Okay, it drives up the cost of production. Therefore, you start to see that a lot of producers are raising their price because of higher cost of production. Do you see that? Alright, so our focus is not indirect tax here. Okay, I just want to point out to you, okay, there's a need to distinguish between direct and indirect tax. Okay, so now I'm going to erase the indirect tax. Okay, and now let's focus on direct tax. Okay, I'll just put here direct tax. So most of the time when you experience case study or when you have an essay, H2 students, okay, they give you a preamble. Okay, they tell you that personal income tax has risen, for instance. So you have to decide whether personal income tax falls under direct or indirect tax. Okay, like what I've mentioned earlier on, okay, a tax on income, okay, is a direct tax. Okay, so we can put it here, personal income tax. I call it PIT. Okay, there's also another category of tax that's also tax on income, which is your corporate income tax, CIT. So you have to distinguish between the different kinds of taxes that are used in order to determine which AD component is affected, because this is going to affect separately. So now let's consider this sequence. When there's a fall in direct tax, in particular, there's a fall in personal income tax. The next thing is you have to deduce, which part of AD is affected, which component, which determinant is affected. So you have to look through you have to scroll through. Is it consumers that are affected? Is it firms that are affected? Is it government that's affected? Or is it the foreign sector, X minus M, that's affected? So now, who is affected by personal income tax? Which economic agent? Okay. Most of you all make the correct deduction. Okay, so I'm just going to put here. So you all mentioned that consumers are going to be affected. So how are consumers going to be affected? So you have to deduce what's the direction of your C. Is it going to go up or go down? It's all about guessing, but once we are more or less done with more practices, you realize all this come naturally. Okay, consumption will go up. Okay, and once consumption goes up, remember, okay, your AD, your C, IG, X minus, they are components of AD, right? So what will happen to AD? AD will increase. Make sense? So this is how you deduce. But you realize that there is a gap here, right? So I want you to make a mental note. It is the gap here that is exceptionally crucial, because every determinant, will have, or every subdeterminant will affect, the main determinant in a different way. So everyone tells me that consumption is going to go up. So why is consumption going to go up? As a result of a fall in personal income tax. Why is that so? Okay, I can guarantee that when you are tasked to do actual writing, this problem will sure happen again. Right. Okay, so most of y'all identify half of the answer. All right. So the closest that I see, is income increase, but it's not precise enough. So what kind of income is going to go up? There is net of tax and transfer payment. It starts with the word D. Exactly. Okay, so this is the keyword. Okay, there will be a rise in disposable income. And when there's a rise in disposable income, there will be a rise in purchasing power. Okay, and if you want to flaunt your concepts, you can afford to even make an even bolder assumption. Okay, especially for the H2 students, you can assume that they are normal goods. Normal goods. Why? Because it's an inferior good. Okay, consumption will go down. Okay, but I don't want to go there. So what I want to illustrate is this gap. Okay, this gap is exceptionally important and it varies across different determinants. So if you want to memorize, pick all this to memorize. Memorize the keywords that are involved in respective determinants. Okay, so personal income tax will lead to a change in disposable income and purchasing power. Right? So if you memorize wrongly, for instance, or if you blatantly memorize or memorize without understanding, then okay, they will be prone to the upcoming mistake that I'm going to show you. So corporate income tax. Okay, so let's say if you didn't experience or go through this class, okay, there's a high chance that you may get confused. Okay, you memorize wrongly, okay, and then you put C and AD, then you're going to cock up. So now let's go through the thought process again. Corporate income tax. Who is going to be affected out of the AD family? Is it going to affect AD or AS? It's a tax on income, huh? So it's going to affect firms, right? Okay, firms. So which component of AD is going to be affected? Which component of AD is used interchangeably with firms? Okay, when I mention firms and producers here, you got to differentiate. Okay, with producers, we are concerned about the AS perspective. Okay, when I use firms, okay, I'm concerned about the AD perspective. Okay, firms will also demand for goods and services, especially capital goods. Okay, so investment is going to be affected. So don't get confused, So this will lead to investment going up or down. Okay, I'm so sorry, my head is blocking. What is going to happen to investment as a result of a fall in corporate tax? Okay, going to go up, and this will lead to a higher AD. So the first step is always deducing which determinant is going to be affected. So the most important step, okay, let's fill the blank. Why is... Wow. Sorry. Is that mine? Why is it like that? Do y'all hear the sudden music? No? Oh yeah, my there's some sudden music being blasted into my ears. I nearly went deaf. Okay, let me check my setting one more time. Oh damn. Oh crap. Oh, okay, but anyway, okay, let's carry on. I'm so sorry. So how is your investment going to go up? Okay, can you guys try? Okay, why is it that when corporate income tax goes down, okay, your investment goes up? Maybe I off all my... Oh. Is it that the firms will experience higher disposable income? Does the concept of higher disposable income affects investment? Okay, so someone brought up cost of borrowing. So a tax is not a loan. Okay, a tax is a payment rendered to the government without any service rendered. Okay, so cost of borrowing is the concept that's related to borrowing. Okay, when you borrow from the bank, okay, then you're going to make interest payment. So good try. Okay, COP is not the determinant here. Like I've said, it's important to differentiate between direct and indirect tax. Okay, indirect tax, GST, it affects expenditure. It will drive up cost of borrowing. Okay, and cost of production. Okay, so cost of production is not the focus here. So, okay, you guys will want to pen this down. You will want to focus on higher post-tax profit. So as a result of lower corporate income tax, okay, firms will find it more profitable, right? And with a higher level of profit, they are likely to make capital expenditure by producing more capital goods and inventories. So this is the correct channel, higher post-tax profit. So you can actually see that different determinants, different sub-determinants will trigger a different response. Okay, and the different response will lead to affecting your different components of your AD differently. So, like what I said, when you look through your notes again, this time round have a different perspective. Okay, look at what is in between. Okay, and focus on the keywords involved. So this is just one component. Okay, and if I were to go through all the components, it will take me donkey years. Okay, so remember, understand is more important than memorizing. And the beautiful part about understanding is, once you can identify the sequence, the pattern. So if the question tells you increase in direct tax, do we need to rederive all this? We don't need, right? All we need to is just to swap the arrows, you see? And it should be consistent. Just swapping all the arrows. Okay, likewise, swap, swap, swap. So far so good. So this is how you want to utilize the book. The book is all, okay, it's designed to be like this. Okay, all the arrows you see here, red or blue. Alright, so for direct tax, you may want to put personal income tax here. Okay, this will affect your consumer's disposable income and purchasing power. Okay, and this will affect your consumption. So I don't want you guys to abuse disposable income. Okay, I've seen a lot of students abusing disposable income as and when. So you only use the word disposable income in the presence of a personal income tax. You don't use it anyhow. Okay? Interest rate does not lead to higher disposable income because there's no change in tax. Okay, so you may want to pen this down. Okay, is everyone clear about the derivation of the determinants? Okay, so when you revise your school notes or revise the guidebook, okay, I encourage you to take this perspective. Okay, making logical guesses. Yeah, so just now some of y'all guessed the firm's part a bit incorrectly. Okay, so work on that. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to aggregate supply. Okay, is there any other issues with aggregate demand that you are not sure? You can pen this down on the comment segment. I will pick it up and talk about that. Alright, I want to talk about aggregate supply. I would like you guys to refer to page 67, everyone. Okay, I will cover the rest of this in the future. Okay, specifically investment, I will focus on this in monetary policy. Interest rate, I will focus that on monetary policy. Alright, so your aggregate supply, the good news is, okay, the principles or the determinants, they largely follow web peaks. Largely. The not so good news is, right now, unlike your supply curve that you see in demand and supply, okay, they look kind of different, right? Demand and supply, okay, how does your supply curve look like? Upward sloping. And no doubt this is still upward sloping, but what is the difference? Do you all know what's the difference between what you learn in micro and what you learn in macro for supply curves? Okay, so horizontal and straight line. Okay, and this is a bowl shape, right? This is a bowl shape. So what explains the difference here? Okay, so this is the part, okay, that you will want to identify three portions. Okay, so I just want to reinstate. Okay, sometimes your school will use different terms down here. Okay, but in AYE, okay, we want to standardize the terms that we use. Okay, so your horizontal part that we see here, we don't call this horizontal. Okay, we call this the Keynesian portion. Does your school use Keynesian portion or Keynesian region? Yes? No? I don't know. They use horizontal. Okay, so I will use Keynesian region. Alright, so the upward sloping part. Okay, this is the part that is most consistent with what we learned in supply curves, your micro. It's what we call the intermediate region. Okay, and the vertical part, okay, is what we know as the classical region. Okay, so some of the schools will call this your full employment output. I believe this is consistent, right? Full employment output. So it simply tells you that this is the maximum amount of goods and services that you can produce. Okay, so for AS curve, okay, how it differs from what you see in your demand and supply is you actually see 3 different kinds of elasticity of your supply curve, right? Okay, your Keynesian part is perfectly price elastic, upward sloping, okay, and the vertical part is perfectly price inelastic. So it's a combination of 3 different supply curves. So I just want you guys to focus on these 2 regions, Keynesian, okay, and classical. Okay, most of the actions happens at Keynesian and classical region. The intermediate region is normally used when we talk about inflation or deflation. For exam purpose, especially the Keynesian part. Okay, so there is also another term that is widely used in the Keynesian part. Okay, so the horizontal part tells you that we learned this in micro, but we are going to revisit this in macro. Okay, why is this horizontal? Okay, it is largely related to one single determinant in PES. Do you all know which determinant is affected? It's being scrutinized here. 1 second, okay, will you guys type out the answer while I try to see what's happening. So what is the determinant? Oh, someone typed it out already. Okay, you guys can refer to the micro side. Okay, under PES, okay, there is this determinant called S. Right? So which one is this? Okay, let me see. This one. Spare capacity. Okay, spare capacity is the correct one. Page 13. Alright, so sometimes we'll see that spare capacity is used interchangeably. So it simply tells you that at the Keynesian portion, where we are very close to zero output, this is 0, it simply means that your price responds perfectly, or rather your output response is very sensitive to price changes. Why? Because there are a lot of spare capacity involved. Workers are not hired. Workers are out of job. Would they take a job? They would. If you provide them with one. Right? But as we move towards the right side, you realize that resources will be bidded up, or resources will start to exhaust. The amount of FOP that you have in the economy is going to be finite. So some of the workers probably will be employed. Right? So if you have to persuade them to work more, to produce more output, you have to provide them with higher wages. And this will drive out your price level. This is the intermediate portion. And towards the end, classical region, you realize that your spare capacity has been fully exhausted. And therefore, your PES is going to be price inelastic, perfectly inelastic. Okay, so your output no longer responds to price changes. So in a nutshell, okay, this is how we want to utilize the concept of PES here. Spare capacity. Okay, so you guys don't need to use PES specifically, but notice that the S word is very powerful in the AS framework. Is everyone following me? Alright, so I'm going to go through the confusing part. Okay, so for those who have the book, okay, please flip to page 68. So just a quick show of hands. Okay, does your school use the same interpretation, SR and LRAS? Okay, I see 1, 2, 3. Okay, so good. So yesterday, none of them used the same approach. So for the viewers out there, regardless of what your school uses, it's going to be consistent, even though they don't use SR and LR. Alright, so if they don't use SR and LR, they will use vertical or horizontal AS, but I'm not going to use that. So between the two, okay, the easier one is this. Easier. Okay, and this one is a little bit more intuitive. The other one is more intuitive. Okay, I'll guide you guys through the easier one. Okay, so you can actually see that your LRAS or your production capacity can increase or decrease, right? Remember what I mentioned about direction? Okay, this is where it starts to get tricky, because there are 3 components in your AS curve. Okay, we are focusing on the Keynesian or the horizontal part. So if it is horizontal, it is going to shift up down. If it is vertical, it's going to shift left right. So there are 4 directional shifts that's possible in AS curve. So it's important that you address the direction correctly, especially for short run. Okay, a lot of students will get trapped, okay, when they use increase or decrease. Okay, so I just want to make it clear that try to use left, right, up, down here. Okay, so I put here left and right. So your LRAS can only shift left or right, cannot shift up or down. I mean, yes lah, okay, in theory up and down it also works, but from a visual perspective, left and right is more intuitive. So now, what could have caused a change in your LRAS? Okay, now quickly type out one determinant. That is going to be, okay, your quantity, your quality of your technology, right? Okay, yesterday someone brought up this acronym, sure, fine. Okay, I didn't know back then, okay, until they spell it out, QQT. Right, so you can actually see that it falls under a web pick factor. Okay, under web picks factor, under technology. So I just want to point out the key difference between the two are, okay, short run and long run. Okay, so if you were to compare these two, okay, you can see that the changes here are permanent. Okay, and this is likely to be short run. So when there are permanent changes, it is likely to result in permanent changes in your production output. If it is a short run change, then your full employment output is likely to remain fixed. Alright, so there's another term that they normally use to differentiate. Okay, so especially when you see COP. Okay, COP factor is normally a SRAS factor. It doesn't mean that COP won't affect LRAS. It can. Okay, but usually, okay, it is a SRAS factor. Okay, so temporarily change in your cost of production will affect your SRAS. No change in your full employment output. Alright, so I agree, okay, that your quality, quantity of your technology could affect here. Okay, and there's one more that's often used in macro. Okay, it's what we call labor productivity. You guys want to copy this down. Okay, so there's an emphasis on labor productivity. Is labor productivity change a permanent change or a temporary change? Do you think when you acquire a skill to be more productive, you're going to temporarily acquire a skill, or is it permanent? It's likely to be permanent, right? Alright, so therefore, okay, productivity changes are likely to be long run. Okay, they will increase your full employment output. most of the time. So what could have caused a permanent decrease in your full employment output? It hardly happens, hardly tests like that. Okay, but what could have caused a permanent change, a permanent decrease in your full employment output? Okay, maybe there's a permanent supply shock like a war, right? Okay, so when there's a war, okay, you realize that production plants gets destroyed. Okay, people or a factor of production gets killed. Okay, then this will lead to a permanent fall in your production capacity. Okay, in fact, in modern days, when there is no war, there is this concept of what we call brain drain. Have you all heard of brain drain? Okay, for my H2 students, you need to know, this is a globalization factor. Okay, so you can, if you read the news, this is how you actually utilize economics in news. You realize that the news mentioned that Hong Kong is getting a little bit more tight in COVID rules, right? Okay, you see that? Okay, people are leaving Hong Kong. Okay, the bankers are leaving Hong Kong. The journalists are, in fact, a lot of people are leaving Hong Kong. And when people permanently leaves Hong Kong, this is what's going to happen: brain drain. Okay, skilled labor. Okay, when there's an attrition of skilled labor. Okay, as compared to short run, you can actually see that short run is a little bit more tricky. Okay, you can see that shifting down, we don't normally use shift down as increase, shift up as decrease. Okay, but I just want to put the direction here, up and down, easier. Alright, so they are normally related to cost of production factors. Okay, they are not permanent. Okay, so an increase in cost of production will drive up your production cost. SRAS shift upwards. Fall in cost of production will shift down production cost. Alright. So what are some of the things that are related to production costs? Okay, your wage costs. Okay, your logistic costs. Okay, I don't know whether you guys caught the news sometime back. Okay, when there is a very huge bunker or ship that was stuck in Africa, right? The Suez Canal. You all caught news of that? Okay, it made a huge news across the world, and it mentioned that there is going to be disruption in logistic supply, right? Because no ships can pass through the Suez Canal. So what is going to happen? Okay, when you cannot deliver goods and services in a timely manner, then this is going to result in higher production costs, delay costs. Okay, this is how you're going to interpret. Will the ship be stuck forever? Okay, I think they removed the ship, right? I think so. Then in that case, there's no change in your production output. So remember your full production output. So remember, okay, when you want to differentiate between the two, always think, okay, are there any permanent changes in your full production output? If yes, okay, it's a long run. If no, it's going to be a short run. Okay, there are cases where, okay, I'm going to show you some exception. Okay, I'm going to quickly jot down. Okay, I don't know whether your school uses, but if your school uses, good. Okay, I'll call this, use a short form. So some of the school uses this. Okay, this is your AS curve. So some of the factors will be like this. Okay, rightward, downwards, or leftward, upward. Simultaneous shift in both. So if you ask me GST, okay, which one is going to better fit? Okay, is it the standard approach that we use in the book? Okay, of a one-dimension shift? Or is it going to be what I've shown you here? Okay, I believe this is more clear to illustrate GST. Why? Because GST is permanent. Okay, and GST is going to result in a higher cost of production. Okay, so the blue interpretation is going to be more precise if you want to talk about GST. Okay? So remember, okay, it's always understanding the principles. Okay, permanent versus short run or non-permanent. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, is it going to affect your production permanently? Questions? So getting the direction right is exceptionally crucial. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the exam purpose. I'm going to blow this up. Okay, I'm going to impart you guys a very powerful framework. There are certain parts of the framework that I won't have bandwidth to cover today, but I just need you guys to copy down. We'll revisit them, okay, later on. Right, so for exam purpose, especially for later, okay, you're supposed to deduce the components of AD or AS. Okay, and when the question necessitates ADAS framework, you need to use ADAS framework. Okay, and they are mainly related to macro objectives. Okay, so be concerned about macro objectives. So what are the macro objectives that I've mentioned earlier on? Okay, or in the earlier classes. Okay, which is what? Okay, your full employment, price stability, economic growth, and for my H2 students, balance of payment. Balance of payment, you hardly use ADAS. Okay, it's only the first three goals that you usually tie in with AD and AS. Okay, and the last one is the most important part. Okay, I will be sharing with you guys the multiplier process. Have you all heard of the multiplier process? Have you all seen in your school notes multiple shift in AD? Okay, so I will share with you in depth what are the things to look out for. So some of the things when you take down notes you may or may not understand is fine. Let me emphasize, it's perfectly okay. Okay, because we'll revisit them. Okay, but there are certain steps, especially the first 4 steps that I need you to understand. Okay, the last 2 steps, okay, we can leave it to another day. And when I impart this framework, one of the biggest frustrations is whenever students don't understand the question, okay, they will abuse this framework. Okay, they will just vomit this framework out. Okay, so this is not the right thing to do. Okay, you need to deduce whether the question requires you to do so. So as a rule of thumb, okay, I'm going to state these few rules of thumb. Of course, there are exceptions. Whenever you're not sure when to use the full multiplier process, you have to look at mark allocation. Short answer questions like 2 marks, you don't need the full multiplier process. It's an overkill. Right, you're shooting at an end with a bazooka. That's not the right thing to do. Okay, so primarily mark allocation. Okay, for essay questions, there's a good chance that you need. Right, so with that, okay, I am going to move on to the adjustment process. Okay, so you can join me in this drawing activity. It's not in the book. Okay, you can utilize the last few pages of the book. Okay, and you want to copy down the steps. Notes. Okay, so general price level. And your real output. So when you want to illustrate multiplier process, or when you suspect that you need to use multiplier process, it is crucial that you have a very long runway. Okay, your Keynesian portion has to be exceptionally long. Remember, it's like aeroplane. Okay, aeroplane can only take off if there is sufficiently long runway. If too short, the aeroplane will crash. Now, why are we learning AD and AS? Okay, because we want to piece them up together. Okay, so whenever, okay, when you are tested on AD and AS framework, do not use a naked AD or a naked AS diagram. Piece them up together. Both of them must come in together. It's just like demand and supply. You don't show one side of the diagram. You want to show both. And you want to show the equilibrium price and output. Okay, price and output. So far so good. So earlier on we used the example of direct tax, right? Okay, we are going to extend the example of direct tax here. Okay, so let's assume that there is a fall in direct tax. Fall in direct tax, specifically personal income tax. So the first step that you need to look out for is identify the determinant affected. So we have identified that a fall in your personal income tax is going to lead to a higher consumption. Agreed? Because of higher disposable income and purchasing power. So the next step is to deduce the direction of your AD. Alright, so this multiplier process works only with changes in AD. Okay, only with changes in AD and only at the spare capacity region. Okay, at the Keynesian portion, nowhere else. Okay, so we deduce that your AD is going to shift to the right. Are you guys following me? Okay, let's call this 0 prime. Okay, and we also understood that when there is an increase in AD, okay, in micro we learn this as demand, right? This is going to lead to a shortage. What do we use in macro? Just now I covered. If you don't use shortage, we will use the concept of what? Did you all manage to copy that down? What? UID, unplanned inventory depletion. Okay, or unplanned inventory accumulation. Which one is it you use to suit you better? Or UIA. Okay, so this will lead to unplanned inventory depletion. So now, after identifying either of this, you have to deduce, okay, from the producer's perspective. If they see that inventories level are depleting at a faster rate, okay, due to excessive demand, okay, what would the producer do in response to a unplanned fall in inventories? Would they step up production to meet the increase in demand, or would they step down production? Up or down in terms of their production? Right, so producers will respond with higher or lower level of production. Okay, so in this case, it's going to go up, right? And when producers step up their production or step down their production, we want to find out what is going to happen to labor. So in this case, when there's unplanned inventory depletion, producers stepping up their production, it simply means what? Okay, will there be a higher demand for labor or lower demand for labor to meet the higher production? Higher. Okay, so this keyword must come out. There will be a higher or lower derived demand for labor. I'm so sorry that my head is blocking. I probably should sit closer to the side. So, step number 4 is exceptionally powerful to address unemployment. Okay, you can see that as a result of higher derived demand for labor, okay, your demand deficient unemployment will go down. When we move on to a macro goal in the future on unemployment, okay, we can illustrate this. Okay, so step number 5 is the multiplier process. Okay, I'm going to show you the standard template. Okay, and I'm going to briefly explain. Like I've said, okay, so this process is kind of complicated, but I will address this in the future, especially for the H2 students. I will cover this in depth. If not, okay, just copy this for now. Okay, and step number 6, okay, you want to illustrate what goal you want to achieve. What is your objective? Okay, so now let's look at the multiplier process. Okay, I'm going to show you a standard template. Okay, so you can actually see that let's identify the step works here. You can see that, okay, no, this is not disposable income or direct tax. Okay, but you can see that from this extract, for instance, okay, there's higher C and AD. Okay, so this is step 1 and 2. See, unplanned inventory depletion, step 3. Okay, producers will need to step up their production. Step 4. Labor is a derived demand. So up to here, okay, are we good with step 1 to step 4? Especially step 1 and step 2, they differ across extracts. That's why you need to be extra vigilant to identify, because it differs. Cannot memorize one, but the framework can memorize. So step number 5, okay, is the multiplier process. So I'm going to go on. You can see that with higher level of employment, as a result of higher derived demand for labor, there will be greater household income, right? Okay, with greater household income and spare capacity, okay, the initial increase in consumption, okay, is going to trigger the multiplier effect, what we call multiple induced consumption, cycles of spending and respending. Okay, this is exceptionally crucial. Please start this, okay, and write this down. Okay, and it will result in a multiple increase, okay, of your AD towards the right hand side. Okay, I'm going to show you how it looks like in the actual diagram. Okay, so this, okay, is your initial spending, initial C. Okay, and you realize that your AD is going to shift more and more towards the right side. Okay, it's going to shift more. Okay, this is what you see in your school notes. Okay, and then they'll sum it up. Okay, and they will show you the final AD here. Maybe I change to orange. This is the final. Okay, you all see this in your school, right? So the green part is all about the multiplier process. So what it simply means of multiple induced consumption and cycles of spending and respending, it simply means that, okay, when there is a fall in disposable, there's a fall in direct tax, a fall in personal income tax, a rise in disposable income, that this leads to an initial spending of C. And with an initial spending of C, okay, it's going to result in a secondary expansion of higher or induced consumption. Okay, when people receive higher income, they spend more. So this is the green arrow that I've shown. Okay, it will trigger another round of AD increasing, another round of unplanned inventory depletion, another round of producers stepping up their production, another round of derived demand of labor going up. And it will continue to trigger the third round, fourth round, the fifth round, until your multiplier process is exhausted. So if you are not sure what I'm saying, okay, the example that I always tell my students is, anyone don't know how to cycle here, can cycle, right? So you realize that on a bicycle, okay, when you take the first step, it will propel you forward. Agreed? And this is normally where you cover the most distance with the first step, right? And what happens when you stop cycling? You realize that you will eventually slow down and stop. So this is the cycling process. So if you don't take the first step, would you even move in the first place? You won't move, right? Okay, so the first step, okay, is the illustration in blue. The initial spending will trigger the first step. Okay, and then the economy will propel all the way to the right because of the residual efforts. So the residual efforts are known as your multiple induced consumption, okay, and cycles of spending and respending. Okay, so for the H2 students, I'll spend more time when I cover this, okay, separately together with circular flow. So you have to state the stop condition. You realize that these cycles will stop when the initial spending equals to the summation of all the withdrawals. So this one I will show you, okay, using circular flow and multiplier for my H2 students. Okay, if not, okay, you can just jot this down for now. Okay, so this is the entire step 5. Okay. So step number 6 will be your goal. What do you want to achieve as a result? Okay, do you want to illustrate economic growth? Okay, we can see that economic growth can happen, right? From Y0 to Y1, actual growth. Or is it that you want to illustrate fall in unemployment? Okay, if you want to illustrate fall in unemployment, you also can, right? So the fall in unemployment, okay, it is the gap down here. From Y0 to Y1 will show the rise in your employment level. Also can. Now this is an exceptionally powerful process, okay, to illustrate the 3 macro goals, okay, of price stability, growth, and unemployment. Okay, price stability, you need the Keynesian part. Okay, so I will not go there. It's not the focus for today. But at least these 2 goals can be shown. And does it work one way only? Meaning to the right hand side only. Okay, it doesn't work on the right hand side only. Okay, sorry, this way. Wait, this way. This way. Correct. Yeah, forget it. Okay, towards your right hand side. Because my mirror is flipped and inverted. Alright, so if you want to illustrate a fall in AD, by right, it should work as well. Okay, this is what we call a reverse multiplier process. An initial fall in AD will lead to subsequent rounds of fall in your induced consumption. So it will fall more to the left and left and left. So things that you want to note when you draw, okay, the initial AD falling or rising must be the biggest. Okay, followed by subsequent rounds of smaller and smaller changes. The subsequent changes must be smaller than the initial round. Okay, because of the presence of withdrawal, which I will cover in the future. Okay, so don't get the diagram wrong. Okay, and all the dotted part is the summation of the remaining process that don't need to draw anymore. So far, so good? Okay, I realize that I'm speaking really fast. Okay, so for the students who caught what I'm saying, good. Okay, if you're not sure, you can stay back and ask me. Okay, but you have my assurance that step number 5 will not be, you'll not be seeing this for the first time. You'll probably see this for the next 2 terms. Okay, so that I promise you, and I promise you that I will guide you on how to use step number 5 and 6. Okay, so with that, okay, let's go for a quick break. The faster you come back, the faster we can start our TP and we can go for our house visiting. Clear? Right, once you're back, you can turn on your webcam so we can start and end early. Okay, thanks, Claire. Okay, so for the students who are back, okay, I need you to access your LMS. You should be seeing living beyond our means. Okay, if you're seeing that, okay, please drop me a text so that I know that we are seeing the same question paper. Thanks. Very good, Dylan. Thanks. Hey, do you all like my new outfit? Tiger eye. Yes. Have I told you guys that I'm born the year of tiger? So y'all can deduce my age, huh? I'm 18, forever 18, right? Same age. Wait, are you guys tiger? No, right? What's your zodiac? Y'all are 17 plus, right? So one year after tiger is what? Oh, right. Wait. No, not 1 year after tiger. What I'm talking about? I'm forever 18, but anyway. Whatever. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so with that, okay, we will kickstart. We have learned ADS framework earlier on. So today is definitely related to AD and AS lah. Right? So it's not a difficult question. Okay, so I'll leave it to your own interpretation on how you want to do. Okay, so I'll give you 10 minutes to attempt this. Huh? Okay, all the best. I'll see you in 10 minutes time. Then we'll go through them together. See you. Alright, great, thanks. Once you're ready, please turn on your webcam so we can finish strong together. Thank you. Alright, the rest, same to you guys. Just a quick show of hands. Anyone new to ADAS questions? Everyone did something before? Something like that? Not really? Okay, great. So like I said, it's not a difficult question. Okay, but let's go through the exam. Just now we went through a checklist, right? Okay, of how do we address ADAS question. So, without me telling you that this is a ADAS question, okay, how do we decipher this being the ADAS question, which requires the ADAS framework? Which are the terms that are present in this question that tells you or that suggests that it's an ADAS question? Okay, we have economic recovery. So this is a goal, right? Economic recovery is a goal, huh? Okay, why is it so strange? Is that all? Ooh. Never mind, I'll just draw it. Is that all? Okay, so this suggests that this is a macro goal, right? What else? So I just want all the viewers and you guys here, okay, to pay attention. Okay, always look out for cues or clues that suggest that, okay, what kind of framework that you need to adopt. Okay, so you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of the fire using the wrong framework. Right, so this demands AD and AS. So there are another two words that suggest that AD and AS is being adopted. Can you all find that? Two words. Okay, factors, right? Okay, factors could vaguely hint that it's AD and AS, but factors also apply for micro as well. Okay, so it's not that clear. Right, so the two words that you want to be concerned about is the two countries. Okay, whenever a country is covered, okay, is illustrated, there's a pretty high chance that there is going to involve macro decision making. All right, so look out for goals and look out for countries. Agreed? So now, okay, with reference to extract 7, explain the possible factors. So we identify that there are going to be more than one factor. Factors? How many factors to bring? Okay, so you have to deduce how many factors you want. So the keyword here, explain, tells us that this is likely to be a 2x2 framework. Alright, so you're going to spend the first 2 marks to identify and explain your first factor, and the next 2 marks to identify and explain the next 2 factors. So this is not a factor spam question. Okay, it requires you to allocate the correct number of marks to each factor. So 4 divided by 2 is going to give you 2. Don't give me 1 and don't give me 4. This is the exact amount of factors that you need. Clear? So let us look at what is required for economic recovery. So earlier on we learned ADAS framework, right? Yes? Okay, and what is your interpretation of economic recovery? What must happen to AD or AS in order to achieve or to prevent economic recovery? Okay. Well, look at things in totality. hinder economic recovery. And if you look at economic recovery alone, then your AD is going to increase or shift to the right. So if you look at hindering economic recovery, your AD must go down or go to the left. Agreed? Okay, so AD must go to the left. So in a nutshell, okay, this question is asking you what will cause your real national income to go down. Okay, so obviously when AD shifts to the left, your real national income goes down. What about AS? What must happen to AS? in order for your real national income to go down. Remember, what we are doing here is just deduction. Okay, so even before you read the extract, you must be able to size up the question properly by deducing what are the things that we need to look out for. If not, it is equivalent to looking out for a needle within a haystack. You're not going to know what you're going to find, right? So what is going to happen to AS, or logically what must happen to AS in order to justify a fall in your real national income? Okay, remember AS has two components, right? LRAS and SRAS. So let's start with the easier one. So what must happen to LRAS? Okay, so someone gave the answer directly. Good, Zach. So LRAS, which direction should it shift in order to justify a fall in AS? Oh, crap, I already gave the answer. Fall in R and Y. Okay, fall in your LRAS, leftward shift. However, for SRAS, it's not that clear. Okay, so for SRAS, I'll use the book. Okay, so for SRAS, you will like to look here. Okay, this is quite clear. This is quite clear cut. So for SRAS, you probably want to insert the AD. Okay, holding aggregate demand the same. Okay, we can see that an increase in cost of production, okay, will lead to a fall in your real national income. So the correct answer is SRAS must shift upwards. Okay, SRAS shifting upwards. So like I said, it's easier to get the direction right. So now, okay, let us look at the extract. I would like you guys to type out one factor, okay, that you have identified from the extract. So when you type out your answer, I should see the case evidence that you suggest and how is it going to affect AD or AS. I just need one. Okay, and then we'll go through your answers. Don't type essay, okay, just keep it short. So essentially, we are using the first two steps of ADS framework, identifying the determinant, okay, and identifying which factor is involved with the determinant. Right, so someone brought up investment decrease. Is that the word investment? Okay, investment. Yep. Investment is being dampened by business pessimism. Consumption debt high, so income decrease. Okay, consumption debt. Here. Right. Claire, okay, while you're typing out, okay, I will go through together, okay, one by one. Saving less and borrowing more. Okay, so AD shifts to the left. It's the same as household debt. Alright, so pretty much AD. Are there any AS factors being present here? Have not. I'm just asking a theoretical question. Right? So we are just combing through the list. Okay, so we have mainly identified AD. Okay, so AS, whether there is or not, okay, we're not sure. We just want to verify one more time. Okay, so from an exam perspective, it always makes sense to give a variety of answers, spectrum, okay, or contrasting answers. So you want to tailor your answers to try to address both. But there are cases where there is no one, that there's nothing. Okay, so don't force an answer out of nothing. Okay, this is just the thought process. Okay, see whether you can address scope. Okay, if scope is not present in the question, then move on to find another AD factor. Clear? Alright, so it seems to me that they are all AD factors here. So with that, okay, I would like to bring your attention to the answer key. Okay, and you guys have your green pen, which you'll be able to do your corrections. Okay, I'll flash the answers, okay, for a prolonged period of time, don't worry. Alright, so with reference to the extract, explain the possible factors that may hinder economic recovery in UK and US. I've gone through the top process earlier on. Remember, whenever you encounter case study questions, do not read from start to the end. Read from the end to the start. Deduce the outcome. Then, look out for case evidence. Okay, so I'm going to list a few. Some of the factors you probably don't understand or don't know how to use. It's fine. Okay, but you will eventually know how to use this along the way. So the first one is tough austerity measure. This is a very, very popular point that you will often encounter. Right? So this is related to fiscal policy, which we will be learning soon after we cover the goals. So the whole idea behind austerity measure is because of high public debt, when government is over borrowing, spending too much. Okay, so to the extent that the government can go bankrupt. That's why you need to implement austerity measure, or in layman terms, cut spending. Okay, and raise tax revenue. So when you cut spending and raise tax revenue, okay, so you have to interpret what is austerity measure. Austerity measure, they won't tell you is cut spending or increase tax. So you have to know what it means. It means that the government is suffering from a huge budget deficit. And in order to correct that, they have to reduce their spending and increase taxation. So this will lead to a fall in government spending. And when you increase tax, specifically direct tax, okay, this will lead to a fall in your consumption expenditure. Okay, specifically, if you want to be more specific, you can talk about personal income tax. If you use corporate income tax, then this will lead to a fall in investment. Okay, so these are the terms that you want to look out for. This is the explanation. Okay, this is how your components are affected, and you have to deduce the direction of your AD. Okay, getting the direction of AD right is crucial. So do you see the pattern? Okay, elaboration of the case evidence, relating them to components and relating them to AD. So another factor that is present is slow recovery. Okay, so slow recovery is an income factor. Okay, so when there is slow recovery, it simply means, especially when there's global slow recovery, it means that other countries are experiencing a fall in income. Okay, when they experience a fall in income, purchasing power goes down. Okay, and demand for exports will decrease. So you see the similarity between this point and our standard demand factor of income? Pretty much the same. So you have to be sensitive. There are certain factors that will affect your foreign sector. Income is normally one of them. Okay, fall in demand for your exports. Okay, and fall in AD. So unfortunately, none of you guys use this point. I'm not sure. Okay, probably this is your second point. So same, you can see you can actually see the pattern here. Identifying the factor, elaborating the factor with the key terms such as purchasing power, and relating them to the subcomponent of expenditure, export expenditure, and AD. Alright, the third factor is business pessimism. Okay, business pessimism means what? Okay, it does not relate to a fall in investment directly. You have to explain what is the significance. It simply means that there's a poor outlook. When there's a poor outlook, okay, firms will expect lower profitability. And when they expect lower profitability, they are less willing to undertake investment expenditure. Okay, so this is the keyword. Okay, so I haven't gone through the concept of expected rate of return yet, so it's fine. You can use expected profitabilities, I also accept. Okay, so this is the fall in investment and the fall in AD. Okay, the last factor, it seems that all of you has used that. Okay, and I'm so sorry I'm blocking, so I probably shift my head to the left side. Okay, or I lean backwards a little bit more. Okay, I'll just explain then after I shift my head. Okay, so some of you brought up, okay, lack of savings and high household debt. So what is the significance of this? Okay, it simply means that with higher household debt, a debt is something that you owe, right? Okay, it simply means that whatever income that you make in the future, you have to allocate a higher proportion of your income to pay off your debt. Okay, so with low savings and high debt level, you have to allocate more savings in the future, okay, to pay off debts and to boost your savings. And you realize that savings and consumption normally goes the opposite direction. It's like seesaw. So when saving goes up, consumption goes down. Okay, seesaw. Okay, so this will result in a fall in consumer spending. Okay, so you got to explain what is the significance of lack of savings and high household debt. Okay, meaning to say they have to the future allocation of more savings to boost savings and repay that level. And this will lead to a fall in AD. Yeah, I think this is quite comprehensive already. I don't think there are any other factors out there. Okay, so for the viewers out there, if you manage to identify any other factors that you'd like to try, okay, drop under the comment segment. Likewise, okay, for the students in the present class, if you'd like to try, okay, any other factors, okay, you can unmute yourself and ask me. If not, okay, we shall take it from here. Alright, are you guys done with the correction? Okay, if not, you can always stay back, okay, and I'll let you copy. Okay, so with that, okay, I'm going to stop recording.